Commander Kim Ji-won walked slowly through the quiet halls of Seoul's Museum of Galactic Liberation. His boots made soft sounds on the polished floor as he moved between the displays. The museum was almost empty today, except for a small group of alien students from the Altarian homeworld. The young Altarians looked bored as they shuffled past the glass cases filled with old weapons and faded uniforms. Their teacher, a tall creature with skin like blue crystal, waved one of her forearms at a display showing human battle medals. The humans helped in the war against the hegemony, the teacher said in broken standard language.
Ow.
Stories make it sound like they did everything alone. This is not true. Guan felt his hands clench into fists. Ow. He had fought in that war. He had seen entire worlds burning under hegemony rule. He remembered the screams of alien civilians as the enemy dragged them away to be turned into mindless slaves. And he remembered how human ships had arrived like angels of death, breaking the chains that held half the galaxy in darkness. That was 50 years ago. Now these young aliens learned a different story. They were told the liberation war was won. By everyone working together, the truth about human sacrifice had been buried under pretty lies about cooperation and peace. The Altarian students moved to the next display without reading the signs. One of them yawned. Another took pictures of herself making silly faces in front of a memorial wall covered with the names of dead human soldiers. Ji-won wanted to grab them and shake them. He wanted to tell them that every name on that wall belonged to someone who died so they could stand here today, free and safe, but he stayed quiet. Orders were orders, and Earth had chosen to let the galaxy forget, far above the planet.
Captain Lee.
Minho stood on the observation deck of Luna Station. Through the thick glass, he could see the massive shape of the battleship Indomitable floating in space. Work crews in white suits crawled over its hull like tiny ants. "What a wonderful sight," said Ambassador Veltar, pressing her face tentacles against the window. "Your people have done such good work turning these war machines into tools of science." Nodded and smiled. "We believe in peace now," he said in the careful tone all human officers learned to use with aliens. But his eyes stayed on the work crews. Every human out there knew the truth. Those research bays being installed could be changed back into weapons storage in less than 6 hours. The communication arrays were actually targeting systems. Sample collection units could launch nuclear missiles. The Indomitable had once broken through an enemy blockade to save 3 million alien civilians on Kepler 442. Now it would carry plant samples and study space dust. But if danger came again, it would remember how to fight. Ambassador Veltar made happy sounds as she watched. She had no idea that humanity had never truly put down their weapons. They'd just hidden them very, very well. Down on Earth, in the peaceful city of New Busan, old Park Dae-ho worked in his garden. His weathered hands moved carefully among the roses, checking each bloom for signs of disease. The flowers were beautiful, red as blood and sweet as hope. His granddaughter Min Seo played nearby, chasing butterflies with a net. She was 8 years old and full of laughter. Sometimes she asked about the long scars that covered her grandfather's arms. But the teachers at school had told her not to believe such violent stories. The scars came from hegemony neural whips. Dae-ho had been captured during the siege of Tau Ceti and held in a prison camp for 6 months. The aliens had tried to break his mind, to turn him into one of their slave soldiers. He had watched good men and women disappear into the conversion chambers, coming out as empty shells that served their captors, but Dae-ho never broke. And when human rescue ships finally came, he was among the survivors they pulled from that hell. Now he grew roses. In soil mixed with the ashes of fallen friends, each flower was a memory, a promise that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. Even if the rest of the galaxy chose not to remember, a transport flew overhead. Carrying young aliens to the cultural exchange program on Mars, they were singing songs and taking pictures, happy and carefree. They had no idea that their freedom had been bought with human blood and tears. Dae-ho smiled sadly and went back to his work. The galaxy slept peacefully, protected by guardians it had chosen to forget. But the guardians remembered everything. They remembered the cost of peace and they were ready to pay it again if necessary. In museums and space stations and quiet gardens, humanity waited and watched. They had let the galaxy believe in fairy tales about cooperation and shared victory. But deep in their hearts, they kept the truth alive. The war was over, but the warriors remained. Hidden in plain sight, ready to wake up when darkness returned to threaten the light. The alarm started as a whisper in the deep space monitoring station on Pluto's moon. Lieutenant Kim Sora was halfway through her night shift when the first signal came through. It was weak, broken, cutting in and out like a dying scream. Help. ... They're back. ... The hegemony. Oh God, they're converting everyone. Then silence. Sora's hands shook as she tried to boost the signal, but there was nothing left. The transmission had come from Rigel Colony, 37 light-years away, home to 2 million people from 6 different species. Now there was only empty space on her screen. Across the galaxy, more stations began picking up the same thing. Brief, terrified messages that ended in static. Systems that had been talking normally just hours before suddenly went quiet. Captain Park Seojin was eating breakfast on the research ship New Horizon when the emergency broadcast started. He was spreading jam on his toast when every screen in the mess all lit up with the same horrible image. A face filled the screens. It had once been alien, but now it was something else. Skin was gray and stretched tight over metal implants. Tubes ran from the neck into machinery that pulsed with sick green light. But the eyes were the worst part. They burned with a hatred so deep it seemed to reach through the screen and grab your soul. "I am Admiral Vexter," the thing said in a voice like grinding metal. "You thought you killed me 50 years ago? We're wrong." Seojin's coffee mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. He knew that name. Every human over 40 knew that name. Vexter had been the hegemony's top commander, the monster who had turned entire worlds into slave factories. They had killed him at the Battle of Proxima. Ayajin had watched the recordings himself. "The hegemony endures," Vexter continued. "We have been watching. We have been waiting. We have been growing strong while you played at peace." The screen switched to show fleets of ships unlike anything in the galaxy's databases. They were alive somehow, with hulls that breathed and weapons that looked like giant claws. Behind them came transport vessels filled with row after row of converted soldiers. Their eyes empty and their movements perfectly synchronized. "Your peace was always an illusion," Vexter said. "Now you will remember what we are." Screens went dark. Seojin's science officer, a young Zolonian named Keth, stared at the blank display with his mouth hanging open. "That's impossible," he whispered. "The hegemony was destroyed. They learned about it in school. All the combined fleets of the galaxy defeated them completely." Izajin was already moving toward the bridge, his peaceful researcher mask falling away. "You learned a cleaned-up version," he said grimly. "The real war was much worse than your textbooks said." He reached the command center and started entering codes that most of his crew had never seen before. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for immediate departure. Navigation, set course for Earth. Maximum burn." "Sir," called out his helmsman, "we're a research vessel. We don't have military-grade engines." "Yes, we do," Seojin interrupted. "Computer authorization, Omega 77, reveal true specifications." Ship's systems suddenly showed readings that made the crew gasp. Hidden engines came online. Weapon systems that weren't supposed to exist powered up. In seconds, the New Horizon went from peaceful explorer to military cruiser. What is this ship really?" Keth asked in a small voice. "What it's always been," Seojin replied as they jumped to hyperspace. "A guardian in disguise." Meanwhile, in the great council chambers on Arcturus, panic spread like fire through dry grass. Representatives from hundreds of worlds stood up one after another, all reporting the same thing. Lost contact, missing colonies, ships that simply vanished. From space, the hegemony's new bioships moved like a disease across the galaxy. They didn't just destroy worlds, they consumed them. Every person they captured was changed, twisted, turned into another soldier for their growing army. Each victory made them stronger, while the galaxy grew weaker. The Altarian ambassador, the same species whose students had been so bored in Earth's museum, now stood trembling at his podium. Altara Prime has gone silent, he announced. 5 billion citizens ... gone. Similar reports came from every direction. The Centauri trade hub, with its massive population of merchants and travelers, the peaceful farming worlds of the vegan system, even heavily defended military bases simply stopped responding to calls. The hegemony had learned patience during their 50 years in hiding. It studied their enemies, found their weaknesses, built new weapons that could turn the galaxy's own people against it. Every world that fell gave them more soldiers, more ships, more power, in her private office. Counselor Yoon Yoonji, Earth's representative, watched the reports with growing dread. The other species talked about evacuation plans and peace negotiations, but she knew better. She had read the classified files. She knew what the hegemony really was. With steady hands, she activated an old communication device hidden in her desk drawer. It had been waiting for 50 years, hoping never to be used. "Priority Alpha," she said quietly into the device. "The sleepers must wake. The war has begun again." Far away on Earth, systems that had been dormant for half a century suddenly came alive. The galaxy was about to remember what humanity really was. Minister of Defense. Choi Young-soo was dreaming of tomatoes when the emergency call came. In his dream, he was an old man in a peaceful garden, watching his grandchildren play among the red fruits. Then the sharp beeping of his secure communicator pulled him back to the real world. The clock showed 3:47 in the morning. Young-soo's wife stirred beside him, but didn't wake up. After 40 years of marriage, she had learned to sleep through his late-night calls. She never knew that each call might be the one that would take her husband away forever. The message was simple. Just 2 words and a number. Priority Alpha, 779. Young-soo felt his heart skip a beat. He had hoped to die without ever hearing those words again.
Yes.
For 50 years, he had pretended to be a peaceful old man who grew vegetables and played with his grandchildren. But now the mask had to come off. 2 hours later, he stood before the emergency meeting of Earth's government. The leaders looked confused and frightened. They had grown up during the peaceful years. Most of them had never seen real war. "The Prometheus Protocol is now active," Young-soo announced. His voice was calm, but inside, he felt like crying. "All hidden military units must report for duty immediately." Around the planet, things that had looked normal for 50 years suddenly changed. In the Australian desert, what everyone thought were machines for changing the weather opened up like flowers. Inside each one was a massive weapon platform that could destroy spaceships in orbit. On Jupiter's moon Europa, the research stations that studied alien plants began to move. Their walls slid apart to show rows of missiles and energy cannons. The scientists working there took off their lab coats and put on military uniforms that had been hidden in secret closets in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter.
Ding.
Ships that had been digging for metals suddenly dropped their disguises. Their industrial shells fell away like old skin, showing sleek warships underneath. The miners became soldiers, and their tools became weapons. Dr. Han Soo-young was studying alien flowers on Mars. When her laboratory began to change around her, the walls made grinding sounds as they moved apart. Blast doors she had never noticed before slammed shut, sealing her inside. "What's happening?" she asked her research assistant, a young man named Lee Ginho, who had been helping her for 3 years. Ginho's face was different now. Serious, adult. He reached into his desk and pulled out a military uniform with colonels. Stripes on the shoulders. "I'm sorry, Dr. Han," he said as he changed clothes. "I've been lying to you." The flower laboratory around them folded away like a theater set. Underneath was a military command center with screens showing star maps and weapon counts. Soo-yang realized she had been working inside a disguised war room for years without knowing it. "Ma'am," Ginho said, handing her a tablet computer full of battle reports. "The hegemony has attacked the Proxima system. 3 million people have been captured and changed into enemy soldiers in just 6 hours. Soo-yang looked at the reports. With eyes that had seen such horrors before, during the First War, she had been a young officer who specialized in rescuing people from hegemony prison camps. She knew what converted meant. The enemy would put machines in people's heads and turn them into mindless slaves. "Start the recall signal," she ordered. "It's time to show them that some chains can't be put back on." Across the galaxy, other alien species watched in confusion as human ships began moving toward the war zone. The vessels they had always thought were peaceful explorers suddenly showed weapons that didn't exist in any public database. Cargo ships revealed missile launchers. Science vessels extended energy cannons. Most frightening of all was how organized it was. There was no panic, no confusion. Every human seemed to know exactly what to do, as if they had been practicing for this day their entire lives. The hegemony had expected to catch the galaxy sleeping. Instead, they found that humanity had only been pretending to sleep. On Luna Base, Admiral Kim Hae-jin stood in her apartment, looking at herself in the mirror. For 10 years, everyone had thought she was retired. She spent her days reading books and teaching history to young cadets. But now she put on her old uniform one more time. The blue fabric still fit perfectly. The metals still gleamed. The scars on her face from the first war still showed clearly. But her eyes were the most frightening thing about her. They held the cold light of someone who would never really stop being a soldier. She walked to her closet and moved aside the civilian clothes. Behind them was a suit of power armor that had been waiting for 50 years. As she put it on, she felt like she was becoming herself again after a long, peaceful dream. Outside her window, she could see the moon's surface transforming. Hidden bases were opening up like metal flowers. Ships that had been buried under fake rock were climbing into the sky. The peaceful Luna colony was becoming a fortress again. Admiral Kim smiled grimly as she watched humanity's true face reveal itself to the galaxy. The hegemony thought they were attacking a weak, peaceful civilization. Were about to learn how wrong they were. The sleeping giant was waking up, and it was very, very angry. The first battle happened so fast that most people missed it. One moment, the Kepler 442 system was under hegemony control. The next moment, it was free again. Admiral Kim Hae-jin stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Liberation, watching the enemy fleet break apart like toys. Her crew worked around her with the smooth movements of people who had practiced this dance 1,000 times. "Target the bioprocessors, not the engines," she ordered calmly. "We want the converted people alive." The human ships moved through space like hungry sharks. They didn't waste time on the hegemony's armor or weapons. Instead, they aimed for very specific parts of each enemy vessel, the machines that kept prisoners under control. The systems that turned free people into slaves. Captain Jung, Min-jae watched his targeting computer with cold eyes.
Ow.
"Neural control. Systems are down on ships 7 through 12, he reported. "The converted crews should be waking up now." What happened next made the watching alien fleets feel sick with horror. The hegemony ships began firing on each other as their converted crews remembered who they really were. Brothers who had been turned into enemies suddenly found themselves again and turned their weapons against their captors. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching the human medical teams work. Dr. Park Min-soo led his team onto a captured hegemony vessel. The alien observers expected him to be shocked by what he found inside. The ship was full of conversion chambers. Horrible. Machines that mixed flesh and metal to create perfect slaves. But Dr. Park didn't look shocked. He looked prepared. "Team Alpha, start with the recent conversions in Section C," he ordered, pulling on surgical gloves. "Team Beta, handle the long-term cases in the main hold. Remember, we have a 4-hour window before brain damage becomes permanent." His team spread out through the ship like they had done this before. They moved past the twisted machinery without fear, carrying tools designed specifically for removing hegemony implants. Every cut they made was precise. Every procedure was perfect. "How do they know exactly where to operate?" whispered Ambassador Veltar, watching from her observation ship. "These conversion methods are supposed to be secret hegemony technology." The human doctor nearest to her looked up from his work. His hands were covered in blood, but his eyes were calm. "Secret?" he said with a bitter smile. "We've been studying hegemony anatomy for 50 years. Every human medical student learns how to reverse their conversions. We call it basic surgery. The truth hit the alien observers like a physical blow. While they had been enjoying peace, humanity had been preparing for war. Every advancement in human medicine had been designed with one purpose: to undo what the hegemony did to people. Down on the planet's surface, Major Gincio kicked open another door in the conversion facility. Inside, she found 30 Centauri civilians hanging from machines that were slowly changing their bodies into something else. Her Marines immediately went to work, cutting cables and removing implants with the efficiency of people who had trained for this exact situation their entire lives. Where other species would have seen a nightmare chamber, humans saw a puzzle they had already solved. "Ma'am," called Sergeant Kim Tae-yoon from across the room, "we've got a group of children here. Conversion is about 60% complete. Can we save them?" Shincio asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes, ma'am. Standard Procedure 7 should work." Gincio felt her heart break a little. There was a standard procedure for saving half-converted children. Humanity had prepared for every horror the hegemony could create. The rescued Centauri looked at their human saviors with a mixture of gratitude and fear. The major who had saved them moved through the torture chamber like it was her office. The medics who healed them knew exactly which wires to cut and which implants to remove. "How long have you been planning for this?" asked one of the rescued aliens. Gincio paused in her work. "Since the day the last war ended," she said quietly. "We knew you would forget. We knew the hegemony would come back. We never stopped preparing. The liberation of Kepler 442 was just the beginning." Within days, human fleets appeared at every hegemony-controlled system. They moved with a coordination that made other species nervous. Every ship knew exactly where to go. Every crew knew exactly what to do. The hegemony had expected to fight a galaxy that had grown soft during 50 years of peace. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that had spent those 50 years becoming the perfect weapon against them. Admiral Vexler himself appeared on all communication channels, his twisted face showing fear for the first time in decades. "This is impossible," he snarled. "Your species chose peace. You gave up war." Admiral Kim's response was broadcast across the galaxy. Her voice was calm and cold as winter. "We didn't give up war," she said. "We mastered it. There's a difference." The other alien species watched in growing unease as humanity revealed its true nature. The gentle researchers and peaceful traders they thought they knew had been warriors all along. Hiding their strength behind kind smiles and helpful hands, the galaxy was remembering what Earth really was, and the memory was terrifying. The hegemony's secret fortress floated in the empty darkness between galaxies, hidden from all sensors by 50 years of careful planning. It was a world made of metal and flesh, where millions of enslaved minds powered the machines that had rebuilt the enemy's strength. Colonel Hon Ji-hoon stood at the airlock of his assault ship, looking through the window at the nightmare fortress. Ahead, his team of 30 soldiers waited behind him, their faces calm, despite what they were about to enter. They had trained for this mission their entire lives. "Remember," he told his troops, "this isn't just a military target. It's a prison holding over 1 billion people. Every mistake we make costs innocent lives." The fortress was designed to drive attackers insane. Its corridors were lined with the preserved brains of enslaved aliens, their neural patterns still active, still screaming silently after decades of torture. The walls pulsed with living tissue that tried to grab anyone who walked past. The air itself was filled with chemicals designed to break the mind, but the humans moved through it like they were walking through a park. They had studied every detail of hegemony psychology for 50 years. They knew which sounds to ignore, which sights weren't real, which fears were artificial. "Left turn ahead," called Sergeant Kim Min-yuk from the front of the group. "Hear the main conversion chamber, about 200 meters." Behind the assault team, Dr. Kim Daeon led her medical specialists through the rescued sections of the fortress. Her job was even harder than the soldiers. She had to free people who had been slaves for so long they had forgotten what freedom felt like. "This group has been converted for 30 years, she reported over the radio. "Their original personalities are buried deep, but they're still there. beginning extraction protocol. Her team worked with tools that looked more like art supplies than medical equipment. Each person required a different approach. Some needed the machines in their heads carefully removed. Others needed their memories slowly rebuilt, piece by piece. The worst cases were the children who had been born in captivity. They had never known anything but slavery. Dr. Dayon had to teach them what it meant to be free while simultaneously rebuilding their twisted bodies. "How do you know how to do this?" asked one of the rescued aliens, watching in amazement as the human medics worked. Dr. Dayon looked up from her delicate surgery. "We've been practicing," she said simply. "For 50 years, we've been rescuing people from smaller hegemony facilities. Every technique we learned, we shared with every other human medical team." The alien stared at her. "You mean, while we thought there was peace?" "There was peace," Dr. Dayon confirmed, returning to her work. "We made sure of that. But peace doesn't maintain itself." Deep in the fortress, Colonel On and his team finally reached the central throne room. Admiral Vexler sat waiting for them, surrounded by the twisted creatures he had spent decades creating. Half-machine, half-flesh monstrosities that had once been beautiful alien beings. Vexler laughed when he saw the humans enter. The sound was horrible, like metal grinding against bone. His body was more machine than flesh now, kept alive by tubes and wires that connected him to the fortress itself. "It's a few of you," he wheezed. "Kate dot. Did you really think 30 soldiers could defeat my greatest stronghold?" Colonel On didn't answer. He was looking at his tactical display, watching green lights appear one by one as his team secured different sections of the fortress. "You cannot save them all," Vexler continued, his voice growing stronger with anger. "Even if you kill me, I have dozens of backup facilities hidden across the galaxy. My work will continue." "Had," Colonel On corrected quietly, still watching. His display, past tense. The confidence drained from Vexler's face. "What do you mean?" "We've been hunting your backup sites for 47 years, unexplained, finally looking up at the enemy commander. "Every secret base, every hidden laboratory, every slave facility. We found them all and shut them down, one by one." The truth hit Vexler like a hammer blow. While the galaxy had celebrated peace, humanity had been fighting a secret war. They had sent small teams to infiltrate hegemony remnants, rescue prisoners, and destroy facilities. The aliens had lived in safety because humans had made sure that monsters stayed dead. "Impossible," Vexler whispered. "We were so careful, so hidden." Colonel On smiled coldly. "You made one mistake," he said. "You assumed we would forget. Humans don't forget." The final assault was almost gentle. On's team didn't kill Vexler. They captured him, removed his machinery, and left him to face trial as a normal mortal being. The fortress itself was converted into a massive medical station where the liberated prisoners could recover. Something amazing happened during the rescue operation. The freed people didn't just regain their original forms, they kept their memories of being enslaved. Every detail of hegemony torture methods, every secret of their technology, every hidden weakness they had learned while pretending to serve. Within weeks, the galaxy had the most complete record of hegemony crimes that had ever existed. 1,000,000,000,000. Voices testified to the horrors they had endured, making sure such evil could never rise again. The war was over, but its lessons would never be forgotten. The galaxy looked at humanity with new eyes, finally understanding what their human neighbors really were. They were not warriors who had learned peace. They were peacekeepers who had remained warriors, standing guard in the darkness so others could sleep safely in the light.